Why, on any given day, do you choose to pick up your camera? Why wander into the wind, the rain, the heat, or the frigid cold, all with the prospect of another SD card that may never see the light of day? Well, it's in the answer to this question that your most compelling work lies, and that is what I want to discuss today. It's all too easy to chase beauty without purpose, and today, let's talk about what happens when we change our approach, when we fundamentally alter our reason for a photograph. Stick around until the end for a bonus suggestion. There's a mistake we often make, and I don't think you guys would want to miss it. Let's get this started with a bit of a controversial statement. Beautiful photographs, made simply for the sake of the beauty in the scene in which they are taken, are photographs that will leave you wanting. I think their importance over time will waver, their personal significance. And if your goal is to hold people's attention, to captivate anybody else, or even just to share these photos, I believe that beauty for the sake of beauty is a recipe for photos that fail to accomplish this goal. And a fixation on how to be better than this, how to get past beauty for the sake of beauty, has led me to a new fixation on the intersection of life and landscape. And it's really better put as life in landscape. What it means to me, at least, is that every scene, living or not, animate or inanimate, it has a voice, it has a narrative, a plot inherent in it. And when we start to dig into that, when we start to try to find the voice and let it talk, that is when images become captivating. Because we're getting past that first layer of just simply what's in front of us, and we're starting to tell a story about what's in front of us. And I think this is really, really paramount to becoming captivating storytellers, to making photos that last. Not only do they reflect the narratives that you found in that scene, but they reflect the way that you perceive that scene and the narratives that you find in it. They're yours. Not everybody else will see them, but when you take the chance to capture them and to then display them for someone else, they become real. And that's what makes a photograph last. So now that we've made this mental transition, we've gone from looking for beautiful scenes to trying to find the stories that are within those beautiful scenes. We're trying to unearth the plot. The question becomes, how do we do it? What tools do we have at our disposal to ultimately tell this story about something that may not even be alive? Well, this is kind of my passion. This is really what makes photography fun for me. And I suppose this is as good a time as any to say I'm actually writing a bit of an ebook about how to tell photographic stories. This is something I've been working on for many, many months, and I'm really excited to release it pretty soon here. There's a link to my newsletter down below. That's where you'll learn when this is actually released, and if you sign up, you're automatically going to get half off of that book as soon as it's released. I may even be willing to give it away for free for little periods of time. We'll see. So there are 3 tools I want to talk about today that I think are some of my favorites for unearthing plots in any given scene. And the first one is probably my favorite. And this is just to stay mobile and seek uncomfortable perspectives. Every scene has this sort of face value visual. But when we dig into that, when we get in the water, when we take to the air, when we climb the mountain and look down on it, whatever it may be, those new and unexpected and uncomfortable perspectives unearth totally new ways of looking at a scene. And they tell different aspects of that scene's story. This is probably my favorite way, ultimately, to take photos. This is actually what makes me mountaineer. This is what makes me love backpacking so much. It's what makes me love rock climbing so much. These things are all different mediums I can use to find new perspectives on scenes, and they ultimately benefit me as a photographer. So seek new perspectives, and specifically uncomfortable ones. That's the fastest way to differentiate your work from someone else's. The second piece of advice I can give is to consider who you are. Are you somebody that sees the world through normal perspectives? Are you a James Popsis kind of person who is looking for the human element that's only going to shoot between 40 and 50 millimeters? This is going to dictate so much of how you choose to tell your story and what story you ultimately choose to tell about a given scene. So you have to understand who you are. Look intrinsically and try to answer this question, and that'll ultimately influence so much of your style. You just have to understand who you are and lean into that. Third, and one of my favorite ways to tell a story in any given scene, is to start breaking the rules. I love things like shutter drag, like high ISO, like really, really deep aperture choices. And these things serve to create visual intrigue. A wild set of waves lapping around these high sea stacks. Well, these waves all have this motion, and perhaps shutter drag or a slow shutter speed can introduce a sense of motion that helps to tell that element of the story more compellingly than if I chose to use a fast shutter speed that froze all the action. A high ISO used at night in order to create a grainy, mysterious effect in a photo can make that photo far more compelling than if I bring in, say, a strobe and illuminate the whole scene in order to maintain basic settings. There's an endless number of ways that we can break the rules, so to speak, and all of them, I think, can be used to make your story about a given scene so much more compelling. We are taught about the exposure triangle and the right ways to use our tools, and that's just false. This is something I can go on and on and on and on about, and I will make other videos about this because it's really dang important. But just remembering that you can break the rules in order to be more compelling, that in and of itself makes you, elevated. It gives you an opportunity to make something really, really clear and compelling. Now, for the bonus point, and this is a point I wish I had the time to make in every single video because I really do think it's that important. There is absolutely no correlation between a technically perfect photo and a compelling photo. Now, let me elaborate on that. I discussed earlier the idea of breaking the rules, and this is really just a continuation of that. A technically perfect photo uses a low ISO or follows a compositional structure that's, along the lines of the rule of thirds or a golden ratio. And I just made a video last week discussing composition that I'll link up here, so check that out if you want a little further elaboration on that. But these rules and these technically perfect guidelines, when executed completely, the photo can still be terrible. And that's because there needs to be life, there needs to be plot, there needs to be narrative that draws the viewer into the photo. And that can be accomplished with so many broken rules involved. Like I said earlier, high ISO or low shutter speeds that break the sharpness or introduce grain, those things can actually amplify the voice that you're trying to integrate into your photo, and that makes them more compelling. There are so many ways for us to tell a story, to give a voice to our photo, and many, many, many of them are ignored when we go for technical perfection. So remember, you're allowed to break the rules, and more specifically, you're allowed to do it in all kinds of funky ways. Play around with it. Some of the stuff you make is going to be bad, and that's a good thing, because when you do find that unique, weird photo that you were able to make by breaking a certain set of rules, it will be so much harder for anybody else to have ever made something like that. That is your chance to be wildly unique, and it may be the photo that ultimately finishes your story. As photographers, we leave the house every single day with the motivation to go experience something, not just because it's beautiful, but because it compels us. So what is it that makes it so interesting to us? Why would we go out in the rain and the hail and the snow or the heat? Well, it's how engrossing that experience is. When we start instead to look at the plot and the narrative and to fixate on what it is that allows these scenes to speak, what it is that actually made us go out in these uncomfortable circumstances, to get out of bed, to stay up late, whatever it may be, when we focus on all those elements, we start to understand what actually makes a photo compelling. And not only that, the people that are looking at your photos, if you do choose to share them, are going to be so much more interested, involved, dedicated to seeing through your photo, your visual series, if they can feel those elements, if they can feel the plot, if they, by looking at that photo, understand what got you out of bed to go experience that. So remember that when you're creating your photos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and check out that newsletter link down below. Like I said, very soon here, I have this ebook coming out. It's gonna be something really, really cool. Again, I've been working on this for months. It's about 140 pages so far, and I can tell you, it's going well. I think it's gonna be a really useful resource. So check that out down below, and I will see you again next week. Have a good one.